Man, I had a great couple of weeks off there so I could spend time with family, but I am really excited to be back at it again today. I am in a residential neighborhood in Orlando, Florida. Over the years, I have told a lot of crime stories. Some of them were more heinous than others. Some of them people knew about, some didn't. Typically, those stories where children are involved, it tends to captivate more people, mainly because most of us normal people, we can't comprehend how anyone could hurt a child. The story that I'm going to be telling today, not only did it make headlines all over the world, but it captivated everyone. Today I'm in Orlando, Florida, as I said, and I'm going to be going around to some of the locations, and I'm going to tell the whole story of Caylee Anthony and the death of 3-year-old Caylee Anthony. It's going to be big. If you are familiar with this story, then you will know that this whole case led to not guilty verdicts in the court of law, but it led to guilty verdicts in the court of public opinion. And it led to Caylee Anthony being labeled as the most hated woman in America. This story today is the full story with all of its juicy details. 3-year-old Caylee Anthony lived right here in this house in Orlando with her mom, Casey, and her grandparents, George and Cindy Anthony. There has been a lot of speculation as to who Caylee's dad was. And at the time of Caylee's conception, it could have been like one of 5 different men that Casey was sleeping with. I don't even think Casey knows. What's really weird about all of it, though, is all 5 men who could have been Caylee's father, they all died in car crashes. Now, I'm not saying that it's something that Casey had anything to do with. It's really strange. Either way, though, George and Cindy Anthony loved having Casey and Caylee living with them at their home. They got to be there to watch Caylee grow up and learn. But all of a sudden, one day, on June the 16th of 2008, Casey comes home and tells her parents that her job, Universal Studios Resort here in Orlando, is sending her to Jacksonville, Florida for work. So Casey loads up Caylee in her white Pontiac Sunfire, and they leave, headed to Jacksonville, supposedly. That would be the last time George and Cindy Anthony would ever see Caylee alive ever again. Over the next month, Cindy Anthony repeatedly called Casey, asking to speak with Caylee and talk to her. They missed her. Each time, Casey gave her some excuse. It was excuse after excuse after excuse as to why Caylee wasn't available. On July the 15th, though, early in the morning, George Anthony, he gets a call from an impound yard here in Orlando. A car registered in his name was picked up from an apartment building's parking lot, and it had been abandoned there for more than 3 days. It was the white Pontiac Sunfire that Casey and Caylee left in a month prior. Not knowing what was going on, they frantically start trying to call Casey over and over and over again, and she doesn't answer them. So they rush over to the impound yard and immediately fear for the worst. George, who was a retired police detective, immediately smells what he believes to be human decomposition. And it scared him to death. He thought he was going to open the trunk and find either Casey or Caylee in there dead. So he reluctantly pops open the trunk expecting to find a body, and then in a moment of relief, inside of the trunk, it's only a couple of bags of trash that had been baking in that hot Florida sun in July, causing it to smell like that. So he pays the fees and they take the car home. Casey's parents spend most of that day trying to call Casey and trying to track them down. They go through all of her friends, and they eventually discover that Casey is not in Jacksonville, but she's actually here in Orlando at her boyfriend's house, who they did not know about prior to this. So Cindy hightails it over to his house. She bangs on the door, and when Casey finally answers, Cindy demands to see Caylee. And Casey, in her calm voice, says that she's not here. She's gone with her nanny. But Cindy doesn't stop. So Cindy drags Casey back to their home here and demanded answers. They attempted to find out what was going on, and they couldn't get any answers out of Casey. So Cindy breaks down and calls 911 just after 8 p.m. that night.
911, what is the address? What's happening?
I have a 3-year-old that's been missing for a month.
A 3-year-old?
Yes.
Have you reported that?
I'm trying to do that now, ma'am. My daughter, and she's been missing for a month. I found her, but we can't find my granddaughter.
After Cindy hung up with the operator, they're supposed to be sending a car here to their house. She walks back inside and starts walking down the hallway when she overhears Casey telling her brother, Lee Anthony, that the nanny took Caylee and has kidnapped her. Cindy burst into a panic, and she immediately turns around and runs back out of the house and calls 911 back.
911, what's your emergency?
I called a little bit ago, the deputy sheriff. I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. We're talking about a 3-year-old little girl. My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her.
Your daughter admitted that the baby is where?
But the babysitter took her a month ago. My daughter's been looking for her. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. And she just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Caylee, Caylee, Anthony.
Caylee Anthony?
Yeah.
Listening to that 911 call, the operator could clearly tell that Cindy, who was Caylee's grandmother, was freaking out. She was in a panic. So she asked to speak to Casey.
Is your daughter there?
Yeah.
Can I speak with her?
Hey, Sheriff, they want to talk to you. Answer the question. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you tell me what's going on a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
When Casey gets on the phone, she's just cool and calm. And you could tell by the way that 911 operator starts questioning Casey. She noticed the difference in their demeanors right away.
Who has her? Do you have a name?
Her name is Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez.
Why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago?
I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her, which was stupid. I think the officers are here.
The officers are there?
Yes.
By 9 p.m. that night, the Anthony's home here was swarmed by police cars and detectives. They sit down with Casey for an interview, where Casey tells the detectives that a woman named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, who they called Zanny, short for Zenaida the nanny, she dropped Caylee off with her while she went to work. And then when she got off, she came back to pick her up, but there was no one home, and the nanny's phone was disconnected. Casey tells them that she waited there for a little bit and still heard nothing. So she left and went over to her boyfriend's house, saying that she didn't come home because she wasn't sure what she would tell her mom why she didn't have Caylee.
I didn't really want to come home. I wasn't sure what I'd say about not knowing where Caylee was.
It's unbelievable. That's what she would have been thinking about if this were the true story of what happened. During that initial interview, Casey gave the detectives a few addresses associated with the nanny, but the detectives get out and go start trying to track them down. One of the places is vacant. One of them was an apartment building, and the office there said that they didn't have anyone there by that name. They had never heard of it before. And then the third place they went and checked was a retirement home that was gated. These detectives, realizing that Casey had lied to them about all of this, they now suspected her. They suspected that she had done something to hurt Caylee. So they go back to Casey and try to get more information out of her. It was then that Caylee tells them that she has more phone numbers and more information on her other phone that she left on her desk where she worked at Universal Orlando Resort as a event planner. Caylee tells the officers that she'll go get it, but by this time detectives are already suspecting her, so they put a stop to it and they pretty much say, no, that's not going to happen, we're going to take you. So several detectives and Caylee Anthony show up right here at Universal Studios, and they tell Caylee to take them to her office. These detectives and Caylee, they walk up to the security guard checkpoint that all employees have to go through to get in. And Caylee tries to BS her way past the guard. Caylee and the guard go back and forth for a few minutes, where he tells her her name isn't on the list of employees. She tells him the name of her supervisor, and then the guard comes back and says, we don't even have anybody here by that name either. So, realizing that she had been caught, Caylee turns around to those detectives and tells them that it was all a lie. She tells them that she did work for Universal, but she had been fired like 2 years prior, and she was never even an event planner for them. She worked the photo booth at the Hulk roller coaster over in Islands of Adventure. Detectives were completely fed up with all of her lies. She had put them on a wild goose chase the entire day, so they borrow a meeting room right here at Universal, and they sit down to give Caylee a second interview, although this one was more of an interrogation.
July 16th, 2008, it's about 13:20 hours. We're at Universal Studios. I'm here with Caylee Anthony, and Caylee, we talked earlier this morning, and we're working a case looking for your daughter Caylee, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, we came here to Universal Studios. We're sitting in a little conference room. Obviously the door isn't locked. We just closed it so we could have a little bit of privacy and talk to you. And a couple more questions came up. Because obviously I know, and you know, that everything you've told me is a lie, correct?
Not everything that I told you.
Pretty much everything that you've told me, including where Caylee is right now.
That I don't know where she is.
Sure you do. And here's,
absolutely
listen,
do not know where she
let me explain something. If you had told us the truth, we wouldn't be here at Universal Studios at a place that you've been fired since 2006. With you trying to explain to us, you have an office and all that stuff. We wouldn't be here.
The detectives couldn't believe anything that she was saying, but despite that, Caylee's story never wavered. She said over and over and over again that she had no clue where Caylee was.
And what happened to Caylee?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
I don't know.
Something happened to Caylee.
She's
either
someone else.
No,
right
she's
now.
either in a dumpster right now. She's buried somewhere. She's out there somewhere, and her rotten body is starting to decompose because of what you're telling us. No more lies. Tell us what happened to Caylee. Tell us what happened to Caylee.
Dropped off Caylee, and that's the last time that I've seen her.
It was during this interview that one of the detectives said this.
There's nothing you're going to tell any of the three of us that's going to surprise us, okay? I've had to sit down with mothers whose kids have drowned in swimming pools, who felt horrible about what happened, and then I've had to go to them and help them try to explain to their families.
Now, many people believe that this is where Caylee came up with the story of Caylee drowning that she would later use at her trial. Obviously, we're not at her trial right now, so we'll come back to that in just a little bit, but a lot of people believe this is where she got the idea for that story. Even though the police did not know where Caylee was or where her remains were, detectives still suspected that she was deceased at this point and that Caylee had done it. So right here at Universal Studios, they arrest Caylee Anthony and charge her with child neglect. George and Cindy Anthony were torn here. I mean, obviously, they could not believe that their daughter could have done anything like this, but everything kind of pointed in that direction. It affected them so much that it would be 9 days, actually, after Caylee was arrested, before George and Cindy would go see her at the jail. And even then, Caylee made it mostly about her, not Caylee.
Hi. Sweetie, we've been watching you for so long.
You haven't?
I love you.
I love you too. Hi.
We've been seeing you sitting down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was talking with one of the doctors.
We forgive anything that you've said.
Oh,
Or
I-
dead.
Hold on. Can we turn the volume down? Yeah, you can probably hear it. My head's gonna explode.
Hey, gorgeous, how you doing?
I look like hell.
Well, you know something? You really need to keep your spirit high for all this.
I haven't been crying while I've been in here.
At her arraignment, Caylee pled not guilty to those child neglect charges, but the detectives were able to successfully convince the judge that they believed Caylee was dead and that Caylee had killed her. So the judge, whereas a normal bond for child neglect would usually be like $1,000, $1,000, the judge set Caylee's bond at a whopping $500,000. It was unheard of at the time. $500,000 for a child neglect charge.
Once again, the charges are a felony of the third degree, 2 misdemeanors, and normally she'd be entitled to a reasonable bond, which would be according to the bond schedule. But again, I have some problems with the fact that her conduct just hasn't changed per se, and she hasn't been any help in this investigation. Not a bit of useful information has been provided by Ms. Anthony as to the whereabouts of her daughter. I would point out that the Truth and Ms. Anthony are strangers. I don't know that I can please anybody in my bond ruling here, but I'm going to go ahead and issue a bond. I have to set a bond. The law requires it. The court is setting the bond at $500,000. And the court's cognizant of the fact that that bond is way high. The court can always reconsider the bond as well as the conditions of bond at a later date, and I will if the situation arises. We're done.
George and Cindy, they didn't have that kind of money, and they had no way to get Caylee out of jail, so she just had to sit there. Caylee spent a little over a month inside the county jail when all of a sudden the nephew of a bondsman out of California posted that $500,000 for her bail. Supposedly, he thought by getting her out, maybe she would say where Caylee was. Then there's some other reports I've read that said he did it because he wanted to strike up a romantic relationship with Caylee. Either way, it didn't work. Neither of those results took place. But she was now out of jail. After Caylee was released on bail, and this is a little piece of information that you may not have heard before, Caylee was rearrested again on August the 29th of 2008. This time, she was charged with check fraud or theft or something to that nature. She stole a friend's checkbook and was caught on camera spending her friend's money. So she was arrested again and taken to jail. And then she was released less than a week later. Even still, it didn't stop detectives. They continued investigating. In fact, they pretty much worked nonstop on this case from the time that Cindy called 911 until months after Caylee got bailed out of jail. Detectives tracked down and spoke to everyone named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. None of them had ever heard of Caylee Anthony or Caylee at all. Detectives discover that during those 31 days in between the time that Caylee says Caylee was kidnapped and the time that Cindy called 911, Caylee spent that entire month partying. She was on security camera footage with her boyfriend at Blockbuster Video and at Walmart and at nightclubs and bars all over Orlando. 2 weeks after Caylee was supposedly abducted, Caylee was at a tattoo parlor getting a tattoo on her back shoulder blade that said Bella Vita, which meant a beautiful life in Italian. Just a couple of days before Cindy called 911, a month after her daughter was missing, Caylee Anthony entered into a hot body competition at a local nightclub. Now, I'm not sure if she won it or not. I couldn't find out, but she entered it in nearly a month. Her daughter had been missing for a month at this time almost. Because of her party lifestyle, detectives, they began to start suspecting that Caylee came up with this whole story, and this nanny who they gave the nickname Zanny, they suspect that she came up with that based on the popular prescription drug Xanax, yeah. And that it just kind of spiraled from there. She just kept up with the lie and just made stuff up off the top of her head. Well, they go on and they do a forensic search on the trunk of the car. Not only do cadaver dogs hit on that trunk, but they also find traces of human decomposition, and they find traces of a chemical called chloroform. Now, chloroform, it's that stuff that you see in movies, like James Bond movies and stuff, where someone will come up and put a rag over someone's face, and then that person will just like pass out. That's chloroform, and scarily enough, it is real. Along with all that, they discover a single blonde hair in the trunk that they 100% confirmed belonged to Caylee Anthony. Now, all this information, it was not enough to prove that Caylee had been deceased in the back of that trunk, but it was circumstantial. So they kept on. And they wound up speaking with Tony, Casey's boyfriend, who told them that he felt guilty, like this was all his fault, because he was trying to break it off with Caylee, and he told her that they didn't have a future together because he did not want to be with a woman who had a child. Now, Tony assumed that all of this was happening because he had said that to her, but I'm 100% certain that when he said that, he never expected that Caylee would kill her child. He expected that they would break up. Tony was crushed by it, thinking that he had caused it. After they talked to Tony, they went and had computer experts go through the Anthony's family computer, and they discovered where someone had done a Google search for how to make chloroform. So with that and the traces they found in the trunk, that led detectives to theorize that Caylee would expose Caylee to chloroform regularly to knock her out. And then, so she would give her the chloroform, and Caylee would go to sleep, and Caylee could go out partying all night and then come in, and Caylee would be asleep and then just wake up the next day. It also explained how, if Caylee had been in the trunk of the car deceased, that they were able to find traces of chloroform because it would have been excreted from her body as she was there in the trunk. They really didn't have a whole lot else to go on, and so for a couple of months there, the investigation kind of stalled. It wasn't until December the 9th of 2008 that it would pick up again, and on that day, an Orlando meter reader, whose name was Roy Kronk, he called in and reported seeing something suspicious right here in this wooded area. I'm just right around the corner from the Anthony's home. I mean, literally, if you take that first left there, you're there. That's it. That's how close we are. There is still a planter here in this wooded area that has Caylee's name on it, as you can see. At one time, there was like a big memorial out here, and apparently this planter with her name on it is all that was left. But Roy Kronk found her remains here, right here in this spot, and he attempted to make a report saying he had found it. For whatever reason, though, his report was not taken seriously. So the next day, Roy Kronk called it in again. And this time, it says that there was a report written and 2 officers came, but they didn't see anything unusual. So on December the 11th, and the 3rd day in a row, Roy Kronk called it in again. But this time, Roy tells them that he sees a human skull.
Sheriff's Communications. Yes, this is Orange County Utilities Emergency Dispatch. We found a human skull. Oh my gosh.
So they finally take it seriously. They send out officers and crime scene technicians and the famous medical examiner, Dr. G. Over the next few days, crime scene technicians scour this wooded area here. They discover the human remains of a small child, along with a few pieces of clothing and a Winnie the Pooh blanket that they were able to match up to other items inside of the Anthony's home. The Winnie the Pooh blanket they found matched Caylee's bed set in her crib, And they were able to find a picture of Caylee wearing the exact clothes on a different day that they found next to the scattered bones laying in this field. They also found a piece of duct tape that would go on to be controversial, and it still is to this day. People argue, was that duct tape taped to Caylee's mouth, or was it just used to wrap up the bag that Caylee was dumped in? They go to the Anthony's home trying to find the roll of that duct tape, and they can't find the roll. But while they were searching the Anthony's home, they found a gas can that was in their like garage or carport area up on the very top shelf, and on it, covering the small vent hole, was a piece of duct tape that matched up to the duct tape they found out in the field here that has been so controversial. On December the 19th, 10 days after the discovery of her remains, Dr. G, medical examiner, officially confirmed the remains to be those of Caylee Anthony, and she ruled it a homicide.
With regret, I'm here to inform you that the skeletal remains found on December 11th are those of the missing toddler, Caylee Anthony. The manner of death in this case is homicide.
That revelation sparked a media circus right outside of the Anthony's home here. Not only were the media here, but there was angry mobs of protesters and supporters for the Anthonys, all out here fighting with each other in the middle of the street.
We work with the family and with law enforcement.
Go to hell, bitch.
I'll meet you there.
No, I won't go there. You are.
Obviously, your job.
Exactly, if you're searching.
Shake your butt some more, honey. Shake some more. Right here, honey.
While all of this stuff is going on out here, all of a sudden, cameras are rolling, and a handful of police cars pull up out front of the home, blasting their sirens as they pull up to the house. The protesters who are out here yell and cheer when they see Caylee Anthony in handcuffs. They had come to pick up Caylee, and they were officially arresting her for the first-degree murder of Caylee Anthony, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and 4 counts of providing false information to law enforcement. This time, though, Caylee was held because of the murder charge. She was held in jail without bond, so she couldn't get out. She was forced to sit in jail until her trial, which took nearly 3 years to happen. In May of 2011, like I said, Caylee had been in jail for about 3 years at this point. Caylee's trial got underway, and it was dubbed the social media trial of the century. Social media sites like MySpace and Facebook were just becoming super popular, and people wanted to know what was going on. So the social media companies started posting live reports on these sites, and people were able to follow along to know what was happening. As all of you know, this started a trend, and since then, social media has become more popular than ever. I mean, it's all anyone does these days, including me, myself. YouTube is considered social media. Now, everything about this case caused a panic with people. People went nuts over this, whether you supported her or not, and nothing changed as this went to trial 3 years after it all went down. In fact, during the court proceedings, 2 people were arrested and charged with contempt of court and sent to jail because of outbursts during the trial.
I will find that you are in contempt of court and adjudge you to be guilty and sentence you to 2 days in the Pinellas County Jail. At this time, I will adjudge you to be guilty of the crime of direct criminal contempt I will sentence you to 6 days in Orange County Jail.
In Casey's trial, the state and the defense combined presented more than 400 pieces of evidence with forensic reports and witnesses. And the trial lasted nearly 6 weeks. It was a pretty long one. The prosecution ascertained Casey was just a party girl and Caylee got in her way. They claimed that, that she frequently drugged Caylee with the chloroform and then left her alone while she went out and partied at nightclubs. They claimed that she wanted to start over with her boyfriend Tony, who didn't want children, so Casey felt like her only option was to get rid of Caylee, to free herself from those parental responsibilities. Well, Casey's defense countered with a theory that Caylee went outside and accidentally fell in the pool and drowned, which, like we said, people believe she got from that police interview earlier.
There's nothing you're going to tell any of the three of us that's going to surprise us, okay? I've had to sit down with mothers whose kids have drowned in swimming pools, who felt horrible about what happened, and I've had to go to them and help them try to explain to their families.
They say that after she fell in the pool and drowned, the family panicked, and it was George Anthony, not Casey, who took her body and dumped it in the field here behind me to protect their entire family. One of the defense's theories was that Roy Kronk, the meter reader, actually killed Casey and put her body there in the field and then reported it near her home. And they claimed that he didn't put her remains in that field until right before they found him, because there had been search parties all over the place and no one saw her until he found her. The defense also made a mention at one point in their opening statement that George Anthony molested Casey as a young girl. And they said it the one time in the opening thing, but then they never brought it up again, and they never presented any evidence to prove it. It was almost like they just said it to kind of shock the jury and to confuse them. George Anthony has adamantly denied that that ever happened. And he said when he heard it for the very first time sitting in court, he was outraged, and he's still outraged to this day that they would say something like that about him. And I'm pretty sure that it's probably kept some animosity between him and his daughter all these years later over that one statement in the defense opening arguments. On July the 5th of 2011, after 11 hours of deliberating, a jury of her peers found Caylee Anthony not guilty of Caylee's murder, not guilty of the manslaughter of a child, but they did find her guilty of 4 counts of lying to law enforcement for all of the running around that the cops did that morning, going from house to house and going to Universal. They found her guilty for lying to law enforcement on 4 counts.
State of Florida versus Caylee Marie Anthony. As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1, we the jury find the defendant not guilty, so say we all. As to the charge of aggravated child abuse, verdict as to count 2, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of aggravated manslaughter of a child, verdict as to count 3, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, verdict as to count 4. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment.
As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. Day of July 2011, signed, full person. As to the charge of aggravated child abuse, verdict as to count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. As to the charge of aggravated manslaughter of a child, verdict as to count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Casey did not murder Caylee. It's that simple. And today, our system of justice has not dishonored her memory by a false conviction.
10 days later, after the results of the trial, Caylee Anthony was sentenced to time served and released from jail. Although the judge did order her to pay nearly $200,000 in cost to the state for that investigation, Caylee was free. She was out of jail. That not guilty verdict was met with public outrage.
Justice for Caylee! 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 We killed Caylee! Murderer wants rent! Caylee! Caylee! Caylee!
People blamed the prosecutors for overcharging Caylee. They said they shouldn't have charged first-degree murder. And they blamed them and said that the prosecution spent too much time talking about Caylee's partying and not enough about how Caylee could have died. A couple of years after Caylee's trial had been done and over with, the judge in the case ordered that some of the files be unsealed. And it wasn't until this time that we learned that right after Caylee was arrested, they seized the Anthony's family computer, and that's where they discovered that someone had searched for how to make chloroform. Well, we learned at this time that the state missed something. And the defense team had their own expert do a search on it, and they also could see where they searched for how to make chloroform. But the defense also found that someone in the Anthony's home had searched for foolproof suffocation, trying to figure out how to suffocate someone. Obviously, the defense found it, the state missed it, and the defense isn't going to tell the state that they had found it because then they could use it during the trial. So it wasn't until after this trial had been done and over with that we discovered all this and that the state had missed it. And, you know, for whatever reason, their computer expert they just looked right over it, glanced right over it. But it makes you wonder, had the state actually found this and used it during the trial, could it have swayed the jury? Would the jury possibly have given her a guilty verdict because of this Google search for how to suffocate someone, foolproof suffocation? To this day, people, feel like Caylee is a murderer. And Caylee Anthony knows it. She gave an interview where she said she knows the majority of the world believes she's a murderer, but she has no clue what happened to Caylee.
I'm still not even certain as I stand here today about what happened.
Now, in a twist to the whole story, after Caylee's release from jail, she moved in with and went to work for the lead investigator of her defense team during her trial. He was the same guy who was the lead investigator for O.J. Simpson's dream team as well. Caylee immediately moved in with him, which caused a lot of eyebrows to raise, what was going on. But then for a couple of years, no one heard from her. But then in 2013, she was back in public spotlight as she filed for bankruptcy, claiming more than $800,000 in debt, which included all of those court-ordered fees and her lawyer fees and all of that. Well, then again, from 2013 up until recently, she laid low. No one heard from her. There was no spottings or sightings of her, really. She just stayed out of the public eye until earlier in this year, when she made headlines yet again by getting into an altercation at a bar in Palm Beach, Florida, which coincidentally, that's what caught my eye and made me want to come and do a deep dive into this whole story. Now, since that altercation in the bar where she had beer poured all over her, Caylee has attempted to open her own investigative business where she's claimed that she wants to help people who are falsely accused of a crime investigate their cases. Since the end of the trial, when Caylee left to move in with that investigator, Caylee's relationship with her parents has been strained and almost non-existent. Cindy had said in an interview that they do talk every once in a while, but it's not very frequently and it's very rare. Now, this has nothing to do with Caylee Anthony, but it does involve her father, so I just thought I would throw this in here at the end of the video. But just a couple of years ago, George Anthony, he was involved in a really nasty car crash that left him in a bad way. He was wearing one of those halo things over his head for a while. It was a really, really bad car accident on I-4 near Daytona Beach. And while we're on the subject of George Anthony, the toll of everything that happened, him losing his granddaughter and his daughter having to go on trial for her murder and him being accused of molesting her and all that during the trial, it took a serious toll on George Anthony. And, well, he tried to take his own life unsuccessfully at one point. Hopefully George is in a better place now, mentally and physically, after the car wreck, and maybe none of that happens to them again. After all these years, no matter how much partying goes on or how many years passed, the only thing that has been 100% certain the whole time, Caylee Anthony has not gotten justice yet. And she may not ever. That is going to do it for this video today here in Orlando, Florida. The death of Caylee Anthony. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, go down and hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you're wanting to help support the channel, you can check out the links in the description box below. Thank you all. I'll see you again tomorrow. Please stay safe and stay healthy.